Okay, my name's Nancy Connors, and this class is coming to you from Unity of Dallas. We've been meeting like this once a month for a year and a half, maybe even longer. I've kind of lost track. And several of you have been in all of those classes. But it's an open class, and we continue to invite people to come here either online or physically. So let's begin by taking a deep breath and getting centered. Father, Mother, God, we ask for your smiling grace to shine upon our group as we come together to identify our missions, to do what we came to do, to be who we came to be, and help create the world community of spiritual thinkers, all in collective consciousness for the betterment and eventual sacredness of Mother Earth. Thank you. All right. It's no surprise that the planet and humanity are going through a lot of changes. We've been acknowledging that week after week after week. And this class, if you've never watched it before online, this class, we started out calling it Ancient Wisdom. And ancient wisdom is not any particular denomination. It's the basis of all beliefs. And Theosophy is a big part of that, which we're going to review today. And along the way, we did books by Leadbeater, Master Hilarion. We did some things from Unity, the 5 principles, which I'm also going to pull back up today. And we're finding we know something is really true when you see it in different ways in different writings that you know are authentic. And you heard today in the message that that divine feminine is that intuitive knowingness that something's right. And the number one characteristic you need as one that's awakening to your inner real self is you've got to use discernment. You have all the control on whether or not to adopt a belief or not. So that discernment is very important. And I talked months ago about some of the characteristics to look for in things that probably aren't authentic. But I think we've all got the message. I haven't asked for money or for you to sell your homes and move. Any of those things that from time to time have happened. I remember back in the 80s, some of you are not old enough to remember Ramtha. And there was a channel in Seattle. People were selling their homes and moving to Seattle to be near the woman that channeled Ramtha. I don't know what happened to that movement, but I remember it was very popular back around 1985.
And you remember the celebrity who was most associated?
No, who was the celebrity?
Linda Evans. Yanni and Linda Evans.
Okay.
And they put their reputations on the line, and Ramtha kind of just crashed and burned.
Okay, Roger, for those of you that didn't hear the comment, he said the celebrity Linda Evans was associated with that movement and that eventually it kind of faded away, okay? But what I plan for today, let me give you an overview of what we're doing and a couple of things that are coming in the future. Today, I'm going to briefly go through some pages. Now, my book doesn't look like yours. I bought this little hardbound copy of An Outline of Theosophy by C.W. Leadbeater. I've had this book for 40 years. I paid a whopping $4 for it. And they don't even publish it in hardback anymore. But I was really pleased to find it on Amazon in a paperback in a larger pages. And if you got the printed version, it was $5.24. And a lot of you had me order it, and you tipped me because you gave me $6. So that covered the shipping. So if you had that, and in your version, it's only 29 pages. Mine are much smaller pages, so my book's 100. So pagination is not going to match, but I will refer you to some topics. The other thing I'm going to use along with it, just a bit, 5 principles. The 5 principles was the subject of a couple of classes a few months ago. And the author, Ellen Debenport, is a journalist, a Unity minister, and she resides in Kansas City area. She is part of Unity World at the Unity campus in the Kansas City suburbs. And she told me this month in May, they're publishing her newest book, The 5 Principles for Kids. Okay, so if you know youngsters that you'd like to introduce to the 5 principles, Ellen's book should be out by the end of the month.
That's the most terrific.
It is a wonderful book, and it's not, even though Unity is Christian-based, both Theosophy and the 5 principles really are the basis of any spiritual belief system. And I said to someone recently, if I could only have 2 books for the rest of my life, if I'm imprisoned on a life sentence, it'll be these 2. The 5 principles and an outline of Theosophy. And I'm going to give you a handout that I prepared yesterday with the help of my friend Claude AI. And Claude is really great for this kind of a task. What I did was ask Claude AI to find the similarities in the teachings, the main principles of Theosophy and the Unity 5 principles. I'm going to start with the Leadbeater book. And once again, a very quick little summation. Charles Leadbeater was born in England in the 1800s, and he was an Anglican minister in a small town. And I think he was an only child. His dad had died early. He talks, there's a biography that he does called How Theosophy Came to Me. And I learned a lot of his background from that book. Anyway, he had no choices, really. He and his mother were pretty poor, so he couldn't afford to go for a, Oxford degree and things like that. But he was a very, very bright man, and he did do whatever necessary to become a minister in an Anglican church in a small town in England. He heard about the spiritualism going on in London, and he went to London to attend a meeting, and of course that was the Theosophist. And they got organized in London, and really it caught on. It was very popular. There was also a lot of fringe metaphysics, people, reading cards and palms and doing some of the fun little stuff. But the serious study of the spiritual background of Theosophy was taking place in this big group. Now, the person attributed with starting Theosophy is Madame Blavatsky. And Madame Blavatsky has a Russian name. She was Russian born, but I think she was born in the United States. And she became a disciple. That means she's studying with one of the members of the spiritual hierarchy. And she became very powerful, clairvoyant in her own right. And she had a lot of influence during her lifetime. Well, that organization got into a squabble over which direction to go, and it split into 2 parts. And the part that I associate with that became the larger of the membership is the group that was headed by Madame Blavatsky, Colonel Olcott, a man who wrote books, and his last name was Sennett, and Charles Leadbeater started out like we are. He awakened, but he didn't know a lot, and he went to all these classes, and he got more and more and more involved, and he eventually left when that group moved to India. After the split, a whole group of them went to India and opened a Theosophy center, and Charles Leadbeater left and went with them. Another well-known name in that group was a woman by the name of Annie Besant. And Leadbeater and Besant wrote a lot of the material that came out of the Theosophy Society. It still exists today. I haven't been yet, but there is evidently a Theosophy Center here in Dallas.
Really?
Yeah, we may have a field trip. I don't know. We need to find. I told you, Tom and I were in Australia, as you know. I talked about it a class or two ago. And Leadbeater ended up leaving India and moving to Australia for the rest of his life. And he developed a spiritual community there. And we did not get a chance to visit it, but I found out it's in a Sydney suburb of Mossman. And Tom and I are going back to Australia in September, and we're going to have a lot more time, and I definitely plan to go there. And I've looked it up online and so on.
Tell them you're coming.
Yeah, I'll email him, I'm here, I'm back. But anyway, I really like Leadbeater's books. They're all short. And I think compared to Madame Blavatsky and some of the older members of the society, his are very readable. But anyway, Leadbeater and Besant, especially Leadbeater, and I know that name doesn't look like it should be pronounced Leadbeater. It looks like it should be Leadbeater, right? Or either Leadbeater, but I've always heard it pronounced Leadbeater. He lived into the early 1900s, and I think he was in his 80s when he passed, but he spent the last few years of his life in this center called the Manor, which is in a Sydney suburb. And I looked it up online and was just blown away. It's this gorgeous, big brick mansion, and it's a real high-level suburb. But when the Theosophy bought that place, it was real run down and vacant. And they bought it, I think it was built in 1910, and whoever built it, it got out of control. He planned a 3-bedroom place, and it has something like 15 bedrooms now. And it has a huge attic, which they've turned into a dorm. And even when Leadbeater lived there, they had a lot of young people that lived in the dorm, and it was a community. And it's still operating. I'm not sure what all they're doing, but it's there. And I'll tell you more about it after we go see it. So, one of my favorite things, and again, if you have your books, I don't know what pages to tell you, but near the very beginning, probably your first or second page of the introduction, is a simple definition. What on earth is Theosophy? An intelligent theory of the universe. Now see how simple that is? There's nothing in there about a particular denomination or a religious figure. It just says it's an intelligent theory of the universe. And this whole introduction goes on to talk about how difficult it is to get people to believe in anything, because they say, well, you can't prove that. You can't prove it. You know, you've probably all heard that. And what we heard today in the sermon, when you read or hear something and it feels right to you in your heart, and it coincides with other things you're reading and studying, that to me is the verification I'm looking for, that it is truth. And Leadbeater says in not only this book, but his longer books, as a serious student, and he was one, they actually did experiments in a lot of things that we would consider psychic research. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, channeling. And he says in the introduction that he had proof for a lot of things that he wondered about. So some of us are even having that happen now to us, more and more. A couple of classes ago, I guess last month, Derek talked about what woke him up, you know, just things, and all of a sudden you start getting mental thoughts and impressions, and the coincidences pile up, and it starts to get your attention, like something's going on here. So Leadbeater talks in that first introduction about these kinds of happenings. I don't think I've ever said this before, but there are levels in spiritual studies. When you first are awakened, you're called an aspirant. You're aspiring to learn more, right? So you're an aspirant. Then at some point, you become not just an aspirant, but a disciple. Okay, and by the time you reach that status, and it has to do with raising your vibratory rate, learning to think more deeply, learning to dig into the divine self, not just the ego and the human brain, but to get in touch with your true inner knowing, and that happens through prayer and meditation mostly. Then and at that point, you usually identify with one of the masters of the hierarchy. Now, what is a master of the hierarchy? According to the books, and I have so many as you know, they're really on planet Earth fewer than 70. I've seen the number 65, but that was a few years ago. But masters of the hierarchy are the government for planet Earth, just like we have a government in the United States. There's a head, and that position is called the Christ. Yeah, that's a surprise, isn't it? That's a title for head of hierarchy is the Christ. And then there's cabinet positions, different masters. Why are they masters? Because they have accomplished their 5th degree of initiation or higher. And there's whole books on the initiations. And that's a whole class in itself that I won't get into today. But all the masters of the hierarchy had many lives on planet Earth. They came from the human race. They live physically on the planet as well as in the spiritual home of the hierarchy, which is called Shambhala. You've heard that word. Shambhala exists in the astral plane above the Gobi Desert. And my teacher took a group there on a retreat. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go because I was still working full time. But they had all kinds of interesting experiences there. So the masters of the hierarchy, some of the names, and I told you, we had a handout a few classes ago where I listed them, but we're not supposed to use their names just all the time in conversation. Instead, we call them by their initials. So Master DK is very well known, and I will say he's okay with me telling you that's Dwa Kul, the Tibetan. And he was the primary one that worked with the Theosophists and dictated a lot of the material, first to Alice Bailey. And did you know that Alice Bailey and DK were not even on the same continent when she got those books from him? Whoa, I always pictured him standing right next to her desk, okay, now this, now that. No, it was all done mentally by mental telepathy, by communication through the spirit world. And she wrote 19 books, and they're navy blue. They're pretty difficult reading. Okay, so we have the starting out with the aspirant, and then that aspirant learns, ups their vibratory rate, learns more, develops their mental mind, and identifies with a particular master, and we call them a disciple. And discipleship probably lasts for many lifetimes. And depending on the path the person chooses, we know we're all evolving. It's impossible to not evolve. But some people want the slow and easy. Some want the AP class like this. We want to speed up. We want to recapture what we've known from earlier lives. We don't want to go through decades after decades just reviewing the same things over and over. We want to make progress. At least that's my goal, and I think a lot of you agree. So, disciples at some point have to go through these stages of initiation. And the fifth initiation, at one time when I was studying it, and I should say there's no more individual initiations going on. Why? Because so many people are moving forward. There are now group initiations. So let's go together, okay? Okay. You may not like it when I tell you what the step 5 is. You have to give your life for something you believe in. When Jesus was crucified on the cross and then ascended, that was his 5th initiation. And he became an ascended master at that point. Okay. So today the initiations have changed, and I'm talking about the human initiations. They're evidently solar initiations. It just keeps on keeping on. But right now we're focused on trying to do what we can in our human bodies and to help our planet. Not only are we going through initiations, but planet Earth is going through an initiation. She wants to become a sacred planet, and she's behind. We read somewhere, and Roger and I have talked about this, I think was it in, I don't know what book, but evidently the masters thought humanity would be where they needed it to be by the 500s.
It refers to that, and the fact that the Riancha had to be channeled at all is the fact that we are so far behind. And then, of course, the only planet of choice that a number of us are studying says that we've got to get this in line because you're still capable of toxifying the universe.
Right. That's why there's an intensity, and I think all of us feel it. And we've got to do this, people. And the more of us that we get together and build that collective consciousness, the sooner we can help lift humanity and lift planet Earth to become a 5th dimensional planet. Now, I've used this analogy or metaphor before. I made it up, but I think it works. 5th dimension, the other higher dimensions are right here with us. We can't see it unless we're at the same level. And the thing I compare it to is a ceiling fan. If you turn a ceiling fan to the top speed, you don't see it anymore. The blades are going so fast they're invisible, right? So we don't see the other sacred planets in our system because they're invisible. They're operating at a higher level than poor old remedial Earth. So we are the brain cells for the planet. And so each one of us that develops our individuality and raises our individual vibratory rate, the more brain cells that we can get doing that, then Earth will make it. We will make it. And there are a lot of higher beings that are watching us very carefully, hoping that we'll get this done. And yes.
Talking about a time frame to get this done.
Well, I hesitate to give, you can go on to YouTube. The question was, is there a certain time frame for this? I don't know how to answer that exactly, Justine, because you go on YouTube and you listen to somebody and they'll tell you, oh, year 2026 is the year. And somebody else will say, no, it's 2027. And maybe it was supposed to be 10 years ago. So the time frame changes. All those predictions are possibilities. And they can be speeded up or slowed down. So I just feel like it's speeding up right now and that we're on the brink. And I've mentioned before, the real stepping on the accelerator happened in the late 1987 with harmonic convergence. August of 1987, those of us that studied and knew that, and a lot of people have no idea what it was, never heard of it, but there was a planetary situation. I don't know if it was when the moon is in, I don't know if it was that. But it really did, there really was an alignment, and that was when the start of the New Age began. And it was always said, I've always been told and believed, that we will have made the transition from the Piscean age to the age of Aquarius in 2040. Interestingly enough, I've always said I was going to live to be 94, and guess what year that'll be? 2040. Love's the same age. So anyway, hang in there with me, girl. So anyway, it sounds...
Wave to me, by the way.
You can help from the other side.
Yeah, I'll be on the other side. Whoa.
We've got a lot of our loved ones working from the other side now. I mean, you don't have to physically still be on the planet. In fact, a lot of times, don't you think it'd be a lot easier if we weren't, and with all the stuff that's going on?
Carol will be with us.
Yeah, I know.
I'll try real hard to bring you along.
Okay. We need all the help we can get, Justine. I know, they can't hear you up here. He's commenting, and it's a good comment that Jade's making, that in the spirit world there is no time. You know, what we consider a lifetime is a day, I've read, in the spiritual realms. So it's very hard to say, oh, this is going to happen on a certain date. But I think, at least in my lifetime, and I'm older than a good number of you, I certainly feel a much different vibe than I did in the 1950s when I was a little girl. Things are so much more hectic, and we see so much anxiety with a lot of young people and people that are confused and angry, and it's a crazy time out there. So there's a lot going on, and every time you start to have a negative thought form, change it to the positive. Things have to all fall apart before we can rebuild and get to where we want. And we're in the crumbling stage where a lot of our institutions are changing. We're seeing a transformation. A lot of new thought is occurring. And even though it might be painful and some people are desperately holding on to the old, it's actually a good thing to be thankful for. And I thought today's message really coincided with that, about this period of change that we're going through. Now, I'm going to point out some things in this book, and your copy doesn't look like mine, but the second chapter on general principles of Theosophy, I'm just going to run down it really quickly. Number 1, God exists and He's good. Does that sound familiar? 5 principles. God is everywhere. That's a unity, number 1 principle. Number 2, man is immortal. Have you heard that one before? The 3rd principle, a divine law of absolute justice rules the world, so that each man is in truth his own judge, the dispenser of glory or gloom to himself, the decreer of his life, his reward, and his punishment. So again, that one has to do with co-creating with God, which is the 3rd principle. Going on to another page, the corollaries to those 3 principles. Number 1, in spite of appearances, all things are definitely and intelligently moving together for good. What we call here at Unity, everything's in divine order. So again, that kind of goes along with co-creating with God. Number 2, that since the whole scheme thus tends to man's benefit, clearly it's his duty to learn and understand it. That's why we're here. We're trying to understand Theosophy, understand the principles, and so on. Number 3, his duty is also to intelligently cooperate in the scheme. And that goes along with Principle 3, co-creating with God, and also Principle 5, expressing God. So these things all align perfectly. Now, going on to the handout that I gave you. Under Theosophy, the emphasis is metaphysical cosmology. Cosmos, studying the universe, okay? While Debenport's book focuses on practical spiritual laws. And you can just go right down this chart. On the left, humans are sparks of the divine. And not only did we learn that in the 5 principles, and we think, That's kind of a metaphysical, simile. But remember when we read the medical explanation of the inner planes, the life between lives that I did 3 classes on? Michael Newton's thousands of research studies from people that regressed back to the between life period. And that was still my favorite thing we learned this year. But we learned in that book, Journey of the Souls, that not only, it really is true that we have a literal spark of the source in the monad, which is the embryo that the soul grows from. So we physically have a speck of that godness in us. It's not just a saying that God is within, it's physical. And it's amazing. Going on down about reincarnation and karma in the Theosophy column, and next to it in the 5 principles, the emphasis is less cosmic and more psychological, spiritual transformation in this life. And then thought forms. Leadbeater talks a lot about thought forms and mental energy, but in the 5 principles, we also learn that thoughts create experience. There was a quote of that very thing in the message today. Remember, it was up on the screen, that our lives are created by our thoughts. And there's a saying, you don't like your life, change your thinking.
That's right.
Okay, so thought forms are living things that we create. And that's been probably the number one thing I've been working on myself this year, is to eliminate any negative thought forms. And that takes a lot of attention. Now, maybe you're not that way. Maybe you don't ever have any negative thought forms. Yeah. But, I mean, it's really difficult to monitor yourself constantly and let that go. Have you ever heard somebody go, cancel, cancel? And evidently that works. I just go around all day, cancel, 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 cancel. But it's very detrimental to your development to just get all bogged down in negative thinking and negative thought forms. So if nothing else, we can work on that one. Going on down the list, meditation is mentioned in both books. Okay, the left-hand column, meditation develops higher consciousness and clairvoyant perception, says Leadbeater. Over here with Ellen Debenport, prayer aligns consciousness with divine truth and healing. So again, very similar, these concepts. Leadbeater has a lot more material on the astral plane and the mental plane. Ellen doesn't get into that in her book. She doesn't get into discussing the planes. Her focus remains mostly on spiritual living rather than esoteric afterlife maps. Back over to the left-hand column, moral causation across lifetimes is fundamental. Living an ethical life. And then again, in the 5 principle, similar ideas appear indirectly through the law of mind action, but she doesn't get into anything elaborate on karma. I'm almost through with these columns. The next to the bottom one on the left, liberation through expanded consciousness and union with divine wisdom. In her book, practical spiritual living, healing, peace, prosperity, and conscious expression of divine nature. Leadbeater's book is more esoteric, which means the hidden, okay, the internal, the spiritual. Her book tone is very practical, affirmative, pastoral, psychologically accessible. Back in the 80s, when I was teaching in Dallas at a middle school, the district put out to all of us that were teaching language arts, which I was, we got a binder on teaching kids HOTS, higher order thinking skills, HOTS. And we had lessons to teach kids how to think. And that sounds crazy, but a lot of people stay at a low level of just concrete thinking, and they don't ponder, and they don't analyze. And there's all these terminologies. There's actually a taxonomy that I used to train teachers in. The way you word questions can probe the learner to dig more deeply. If you just ask for, what year was the Alamo built? That's not any higher order thinking. But what if you said to your social studies class, was the outcome of the Alamo battle worth all the things that happened, and have them analyze the deaths of some of the big well-known people and, the outcome of what happened with territory, with Mexico and Texas. So you dig deeper in higher thinking. Critical thinking, that's a good way, yes. So the more you read and stretch yourself, I think the more likely you are to get to that point. But again, that's your choice on how much you want to do of that. I have found myself giving up things like bridge that I used to play 5 days a week. I've cut it way back because I'm spending at least 2 to 3 hours a day in spiritual study now, reading books, especially. I'm a big reader. It could be watching videos. Some of you are really into, finding things on YouTube, and that's fine. Whatever is your way to learn and expand, do it. Stretch your mind. And the new group of world servers, why this is so important, it is talking about individuals that came in, and they probably don't know that they're part of this group. There are not too many of them that think they are, and I'm sure we all in this room are. But this is not just ministers and priests. It's regular people in regular jobs all over planet Earth. Their mindset is to improve humanity and take care of the planet. It's not about how much money they can earn or power or anything like that. Their whole motivation underlying their life is upgrading humanity and helping Earth achieve its sacred status. So it's really, really wonderful to know that we have this going on. And I shared with you in the class after we came back from Australia, how Tom and I thought I went to Australia to see Uluru, and it turned out I went to meet Lightworkers. I had wonderful experiences, about 10 of them we counted, just accidental, where something would come up, and twice I had people do this to me, and it was just kind of, oh my goodness, there really are light workers in New Zealand and Australia, and if that's true, then they're probably on every continent. And it's very reassuring to know we're not in it alone, because it's a big job. It's a big job to change the collective consciousness, and that's what we're here to do. There's so much more I could say about this book, but I hope that if you haven't read it, you will. And it's one of those things that you can keep and reread because it's so short. There's a chapter on reincarnation, which has been one of our big topics all year. There's a chapter on death and how we just have the most ridiculous attitude toward death. Really, it's done a lot of harm to humanity to think of death as something so awful, when it's really what Leadbeater says, taking off your overcoat and going forward in the real you, the spirit, the soul. Ellen Debenport calls our physical body our spacesuit. So we're not a body with a soul, we're a soul wearing a body. And that's an important distinction to know. There is no death. There is no death. And we learned in the Michael Newton material that you can be a pretty evil person that's lived a miserable life and done horrible things, and you're still not doomed. That when those individuals cross over, their souls get some improvement work. They're restructured. But there is no hell unless you just create it for yourself in the astral world. but the soul lives on forever. And we need to quit this gloom and doom and all this, black armbands like they used to have in the Victorian age and black wreath on the door and everything, so negative. That death is really just crossing into that other world. And everything you read about it, if you want to read about it, get the Michael Newton books and read what he discovered. And he was coming from an agnostic viewpoint, maybe even atheist. He didn't believe anything until he had hundreds and hundreds of his clients not just do past life regression, but go to that in-between period and describe the spiritual world. And so once you read that and you accept it, you're not going, sure you miss people that cross over because we're not aware that we're visiting with them at night and having that ongoing conversation with them when they're in the spirit world. But people, yes, we're going to miss them physically, but they're not really gone. And you're going to, the people that you run into over and over are in your group that tend to choose to come back in lifetimes playing different roles. And again, all that's in the Newton material. A few of us have been reading a book called The Only Planet of Choice. And I've had that book for over 20 years. And it's fascinating. Evidently, out of all the hundreds of thousands of planetary civilizations in all of the universes they talk about, this little old blue planet Earth is the only one with a species that has free choice. And a common question is, okay, if there is a God, and I think we all agree there's a source, and if there are advanced ones and disciples, why on earth don't they come in here and fix everything, right? Well, guess what? That would take away the very central premise of this planet, freedom of choice. They're not going to rescue us and clean this place up. It's up to us. Wow. Remember when your kids were little and they made a mess and you said, you made it, you clean it up. I want to do one brief little mention of something that you're going to be hearing a lot about. Derek came to me a month ago and said, I have a guy I've known online named Jonathan Ashford who had a major near-death experience, and it totally changed his life. He has a following on YouTube, and he's going to come and be our June speaker. We're expecting a big turnout, so put down June 14th. That's the second Sunday in June, and I'm sure it'll be taped. But I just wanted to put that out there now. I wanted to share, I photocopied this out of the back of one of my books. Two of these mantras I say almost all the time. I've known them. I was taught them from my teacher. The sons of men are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love which underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all men love. That's one of the ones I've known for a long time. Now, that word men, if that bothers you, you can change it to human. The other one that I say all the time is the last one. I am a point of light within a greater light. I'm a strand of loving energy within the stream of love divine. I'm a point of sacrificial fire focused within the fiery will of God, and thus I stand. I'm a way by which men may achieve. I'm a source of strength enabling them to stand. I'm a beam of light shining upon the way, and thus I stand. And standing thus revolve and know this way, the ways of men, and know the ways of God, and thus I stand. So, I get goosebumps saying that. So here's the plan. In a couple of minutes, we're going to say together the mantra of the new group of world servers. What this is going to be is a commitment ceremony. So it's your choice. If you don't like that idea of committing to being a world server and a light worker, you don't have to do it. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to have you stand up, and we're going to all read that. And then I'm going to have you come by, and I brought my magic wand with a crystal on top. And we'll start, I guess, in the back, and you'll walk by, and I will tap you and affirm that you are a light worker and a member of the new group of world servers. So it's a commitment. If you don't want to be part of it, please don't think you have to. And if, again, when I do the official tap, you're not going to be a knight, but you will be an official light worker. Okay, ready? Let's do it. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. I anoint you a light worker. I'm going to bop you in the head. Anoint you a light worker.